Hello? Hello?
How are you settling in?
Oh, hey, John.
I know this isn't what you asked for, but think of it as more of a lateral transition.
Yeah, no, I know.
You should be getting a file shortly, on an interesting assignment to say the least.
Oh, I think I just did.
Oh,
It's an interesting courier system you've got there.
that's funny.
Why is that?
Have a look at the files and report back anything of interest.
Okay, you got it, John.
Oh, and that's Major Smith now.
Right. Yeah, of course.
Hey, help yourself to some of that whiskey.
During the height of the Cold War, the United States government embarked on a mission to gain an advantage over the Soviet Union. To do this, they sought to use a new weapon that could give them an edge in the conflict: mind reading. Hard to believe, but they initiated a highly classified project that began in a research lab in California in the 70s before moving to a Maryland Army base. The CIA, Army and Defense Intelligence Agency, recruited people who claimed to have extrasensory perception, otherwise known as ESP, to help them uncover intelligence secrets.
And they're really concerned because the Soviets, including the KGB, were spending millions of dollars every year on this kind of phenomenon.
In response, the CIA began to fund their own research in secret at the Stanford Research Institute, SRI, in Menlo Park, California. And recently, in 2017, the CIA declassified some 12 million pages of records, which revealed new details about the program, now known as Project Stargate. Psychics, who were referred to as remote viewers, took part in a wide range of operations, from locating hostages kidnapped by Islamic terrorist groups to tracing the paths of fugitive criminals within the United States. Now, in the world of remote viewing, one name stands out: Ingo Swann.
Ingo Swann claims to have used this astral body to travel to distant planets. He tells us how it feels to travel in this energy body.
This individual was instrumental in the development and advancement of remote viewing as a technique and helped bring it to the attention of the US government. Swann, a renowned artist and psychic, is often credited with developing the first systematic approach to remote viewing in the 70s. He'd already gained some fame for his psychic abilities and was approached by scientists at SRI to participate in the research on psychic phenomena. He soon began to work with Dr. Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ, two of the leading researchers in the field of parapsychology. It was at SRI that Swann developed his unique approach to remote viewing, which he called coordinate remote viewing, or CRV. CRV involves a structured process of gathering information through the use of visual sensory impressions. It starts with the viewer establishing a target, typically a location or object, and then working to gather information about that target through a series of structured steps. Swann's method was so successful that it was eventually adopted by the US government, and Swann himself became a consultant for various intelligence agencies. One of Ingo Swann's most well-known cases was his work with the planet Jupiter. In 1973, Swann began working with scientists at SRI to explore the possibility of remote viewing planetary objects. Swann was tasked with viewing Jupiter, and his results were nothing short of extraordinary. Swann was able to accurately describe the complex atmospheric patterns of Jupiter, as well as the presence of a previously unknown ring around the planet. These findings were later confirmed by NASA's Pioneer 10 spacecraft, which then flew past Jupiter in the 70s.
So Hal came and said, "You're the first to find a ring around Jupiter." I said, "I am?"
In addition to his work with planets, Ingo Swann also provided remote viewing services to the US government. One of his most famous cases involved his work with the CIA. Swann was asked to remote view a secret facility in the Soviet Union that was believed to be used for the manufacturing of nuclear weapons. He was able to provide accurate descriptions of the facility's layouts and operations, as well as the presence of nuclear materials. His findings were later confirmed by satellite imagery. Among the remote viewers who worked on the project, Army veteran Joseph McMoneagle stood out. He's also known as remote viewer number 001. He participated in approximately 450 missions between 1978 and 1984, as he later told the Washington Post, including helping the Army locate hostages in Iran and pointing CIA agents to the shortwave radio concealed in the pocket calculator of a suspected KGB agent captured in South Africa. The CIA's work on ESP concluded in the late 1970s, and the program moved to the U.S. Army's Fort Meade in Maryland, where it was funded by the Defense Intelligence Agency. And despite public denials from the Pentagon about spending money on psychic research, Congress continued to approve funds for the remote viewing program for almost 2 decades. The CIA finally released a report in 1995 that acknowledged the U.S. government's long-rumored work with remote viewing for military and intelligence purposes. My investigation begins with my friend Nelson Dellis, 5-time U.S. memory champion. Nelson recalls being approached by some men in suits who are going to train him in remote viewing and to use his ability to play the stock market.
My thoughts about remote viewing before I knew about it. I didn't really know about it. Honestly, I'd never really heard about it. But if we're talking about like psychic type stuff, ESP, there's a part of me that would laugh at it, right? That like I cannot believe in that, because what I know and the way I've always thought about the world, I need the evidence. The intellectual elite have said about the world. That's what I believe, and nothing goes against that. Things like ESP and psychokinesis and telepathy, while fun to think about, it's not within my worldview, you know?
When you were approached by people, maybe we're jumping a little forward here, what was the interaction that led you down this road?
There was a post on Facebook on one of my memory groups that I'm a part of, and it said something very vague and cryptic, you know, looking for memory athletes that have some free time and want to make a little bit of cash on the side. I'm always interested in what people have in mind for a job, part-time job even, that has to do with a skill that I've honed. So I always throw my hat in the ring because I'm curious. I got a call from this company or the person running the project, and the first thing they asked me was, have you ever heard of remote viewing? And my answer was no. Have you ever heard of Project Stargate, or you know, people who use psychic abilities to perceive things in the future, or things that are non-local or remote? I was like, okay. And I could feel my eyes rolling in the back of my head. But it sounded like a cool story, you know, that could potentially develop. That was honestly the only reason I decided to do it. No, so immediately after that call, I'm Googling furiously, you know, remote viewing, real, remote viewing, studies, or, you know, anything that would give this any level of credibility. And honestly, I didn't really find what I was looking for. Was I excited? Of course, you know, there's always that part of me, in the same way that I fell into memory sports, because, you know, I didn't know that memory techniques existed. I would have never thought that I could hone my memory to be at champion level and to do the things it does. Yet, I discovered this world and learned the techniques, and they work. Same with this. I guess there's a little bit of me that hopes that there's some, you know, hidden ability within all of us that can do more, just like the memory thing did.
Can you tell me a little bit about these people at all?
Yeah, I can't really, for many reasons, I can't say much, and I know that's gonna roll people's eyes. There was an NDA. Yeah, it's obviously something I'm now comfortable talking about, but it's definitely a bit scary. At the very least, I was gonna have a story.
Were they wearing suits?
I never met anybody. They had a project manager that was dealing with me. And they said, well, we want to train you we've hired an expert remote viewer who does this for a living. I'm happy to share his information. Stuart.
I've been doing this for about 12 years now. I started back in 2010. And before that, I was very much, I didn't believe in any of this kind of, like, I hadn't heard about it, but I didn't believe in any of it. I was very like, what I can touch, what I can see, you know, what scientists say is the nature of reality. That's what makes sense to me. That's what I believe. In 2010, I had an experience that kind of changed my perspective on reality. The short title of it, I suppose, would be I saw a UFO in the middle of the San Francisco Bay Area. I see a triangle of lights and then a orangish red one in the middle, orange, like a little bit brighter than the ones on the outside. And I'm watching this come towards me. I'm like, are these helicopters? You know, I'm trying to like figure out what this is. It goes past my house and I keep watching it. And then like a bat out of hell, this thing took off like you snap your finger. This thing went from over my head past the horizon in under a second. What other beliefs do I have that maybe need some reassessing that might be wrong? One of them was, I remembered this remote viewing thing I had heard on the radio when I was 13 at my great-grandma's house because she loved Art Bell. And so there was like these remote viewers talking about some CIA program.
Joe McMonagle is currently a full-time research associate and partner with the Laboratories for Fundamental Research, Cognitive Sciences Laboratory, Palo Alto, California, where he has provided consulting support to research and development in remote viewing.
I was like, I wonder if that was real. And so I looked it up. I bought a program online and I went through it. And it was just go through these steps, you know, calm your mind. And, you know, if it wasn't like a really close drawing, I would have gone, well, that could have just been chance. But I drew a space shuttle and a whole bunch of smoke coming around. I was like, well, I don't know. This could be completely wrong. And then literally the picture was the space launch shuttle and smoke going everywhere. And I'm like, you know, it's like seeing a UFO is one thing, but seeing that actually be that accurate, I was like, it was another kind of like crack in my reality. And it's like, I really don't know anything.
They said I'd be meeting for a month with this guy, 5 days a week for an hour. And then once that period was over, then I started getting into the tasks that potentially could have earned me more money. Because I was also going to get a stake of the winnings from my sessions. At the beginning, you know, there'd be some things that were kind of interesting. Most of the time, I was pretty hard on myself. Like, I was like, okay, this is confirmation bias, or, you know, it's just chance. But there was one session I remember, and if you ever get to this point, which you will, you'll know what I'm talking about. Like the hairs stick up on the back of your neck, and you're just like, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps now, but it's something's happening. Man, at that point, I was like, shit, I gotta rethink my worldview now. Not like what 7 years of my life, you know, being so adamant and even following my degree for the purpose of understanding the world, physics, right? Like I thought that would answer it, and there was nothing more. And now it's all kind of up in smoke. We started with stage one, and I did my sketch, which at that point we were doing something very vague for the first sketch, and you kind of see these general structures. And then based on those structures, you then do a session for each of those little structures. So it gets really complicated and complex in terms of the amount of pages of info you have. And so I had 3 distinct things happening. And I felt like one was some kind of life form. That was one that was coming to me. Another one was kind of land. Not land, but like some natural, it was like water, but it was like an ocean. And then another part was some kind of movement, also kind of water, falling, these kind of 3 different things. And, you know, we explored them more, and at the end, I have the sketch clear in my mind of, you know, some kind of waving, undulating surface. And then there was a whale breaching. And I drew the whale. You know, none of these are like incredible replicas in terms of the way the whale was moving in my sketch, kind of the fins coming out of the body, the descriptors that I had for this life form. I even think I had the word blubber in there. And that all together, when I drew the final sketch, was, you know, and he revealed the photo to me after. I just froze.
So at this point, you haven't seen the photo at all.
Right.
This is your drawing. We have what looks like water. You never called it water, but what looks like water and waves. Yep. Something coming out. We got things coming off it, and then we have this dripping.
Yep. Nature setting in pleasant weather. I was off there with two distinct things on the site. One is a life form of sorts breaching with movement in and out. Okay. A second thing, more wet, sticky, falling from up to down.
Yeah. It was a whale breaching.
Yeah.
And you have your sketch?
Yeah. And to me, that was worthy of something being, it was worthy of me stopping to say, something is happening here.
All right, strap yourselves in. This is a crash course on remote viewing. Obviously, we're not going through all the little finer details, but this essentially is how it's done.
All right, for the remote view.
I'm so ready.
First stage, S1, as we'll call it, is where you develop this ideogram. Okay, ideogram is like a very simple drawing. It's a sketch.
An ideogram is a little squiggle on the line, on the paper, that represents the primary gestalt of the site.
You put your pen on the page and you scribble whatever comes to mind. The more you think about this, the worse this is going. Next, what you do is you describe. So just little descriptors about the process of you drawing that scribble. There's two things that are gonna come out of this final part of stage one, which is the feeling and something called the gestalt. Well, a gestalt really is kind of like a general category of things. It could be nature, life form, structure, landmass. Then with that, you go into stage two where you start to perceive things, colors, energies, dimensions, textures, sounds, temperatures, tastes, all the things that you try to describe something in real life. When that stream kind of stops is when you can stop. If anything comes to mind, like if you see, oh, it's red, white, and blue, and you're like, American flag. Again, you want to avoid those. So on the side, you can write AOL, which we said was analytical overlay, and you address it. You say flag. Now you must be thinking, okay, well, what the fuck are you describing if there's nothing to be described? You know, well, that's the thing. You don't even think about it. The more you think about it, the worse you're gonna do, even if it doesn't make sense. That's, I think, honestly what most of the training is how do you quiet the analytical mind. Stage three then is the sketch. Whatever comes to paper, you know, it's gonna be very abstract. So once you have the sketch, that's stage three, then it's stage four, which is basically kind of elaborating on the sensory data that's coming through. And it's really here where you can, I'm not gonna say you say what it is, but you go down more of a targeted telescope and you can extract more data and get to more information that potentially later could be analyzed and given as a result. And then that's it. Usually at the end, I might say end, put my pen down, close stream.
After this training, I spent the next year practicing and honing this new skill.
Another day, another remote viewing session. All right, another day, another session, another remote viewing session. Yeah, today's session was a bit of a bust. I'd give this a 1 on 10. This is how it goes, and we'll continue tomorrow with a fresh session.
Although a big part of me still felt skeptical, I couldn't argue with some of the results that we found. Now, it's important to know that all these tests were done blind, meaning I had no idea what the target was. I was just given an 8-digit number, and with that, had to describe what was inside the envelope. And these are some of the better sessions I've had. It's a place.
It's a volcano.
Volcano/lava.
Brown, red, hard, rocky. Gravel, dust, sulfuric. Sharp, echoing, rough, maybe a pattern. I see a red cliff and a blue light. Session number 2. I see a structure. Red, yellow, white, bluish. It's a building, metallic and heavy, with stairs and rungs. There's a smell of metal and it's breezy. There's a fast movement in the picture. A skyscraper with a sunset. A metal roof.
Look at this photo, right? And then the Eiffel Tower is back here. Yeah. And looking up, we have sunset, orange, yellow, bright colors, metal. I wrote metal, metallic, heavy, stairs, rungs.
Session number 3. Fast, I see some type of outdoor activity. There's a life form. I see white and blue stripes running fast like a sport. It's outdoors. White, red, and blue, and windy, and loud. And there's air and cloth moving in the wind. Maybe a flag?
Let's go have a look. This is always such a weird thing. Because, like, you're drawing it and you feel all confident, you're like writing, you're like, yes. And then it comes time to like look at the picture and you're like, oh wait, what if I'm absolutely wrong? How embarrassing and how weird. But, you know, that's what this experiment's for. Let's go have a look. What number was it? 106, 106, here we go. Oh my God.
Session number 4. A feeling of busy. There's a building, a structure. Gray, green, white, black, metal. I see bricks, large, stone, square, rectangular cement bricks. There's a sunset, and people are looking up. I see windows, glass. It's huge. There are these large blue bricks.
It was pretty freaking close. I mean, even the drawing this time, normally my drawings are like so, even the drawing was really close. So I had building, structure, and gray, green, white, black, metal, brick, stone, square, rectangular, sky, flying, bird, windows, glass, cement, cold, dusty, sunset, uplifting, looking up. That was my picture. And then again, I had blue bricks, sunny, huge, large, tall, looking up. And here's the picture. So, pretty good. I'm pretty impressed with this. I give this like a 6 out of 10. Easy. On to the next one.
After further research, I've obtained the name of the individual who taught Mr. Stuart how to remote view. A gentleman by the name of Major Ed Dames, a retired U.S. Army major who claims that he was trained by Ingo Swann as a remote viewer in Project Stargate while serving in the Army in the 80s. Dames was involved on the production of several Hollywood films, including Suspect Zero, and was actually portrayed by Kevin Spacey in the movie Men Who Stare at Goats. You know what? I could use a little distraction. This counts as investigation, doesn't it?
He was also able to lift bags of sand on hooks hung through his scrotum.
50% on Rotten Tomatoes. I could see why.
He was one of the Jedi teachers at Fort Bragg.
Sir, what is the practical application of this?
Don't worry, Bob, we're not gonna get in that truck.
Not exactly Oscar-worthy, but I get the point.
Well, the hooker thing is definitely a lie.
Larry had been doing research into the infamous CIA MK Ultra experiments.
All right, I think I've seen enough.
His own psychic powers. All he needed was a lab rat to try them out on, check if they were safe.
Well, that's strange. something funny going on. But no time for that now. I think it's time we pay Mr. Dames a visit.
Got to Sacramento last night. We landed and hung out with Major Ed Dames. Major Ed Dames, who was part of the Spy program in the 80s. He was actually the person who trained Brett Stuart and who then in turn trained Nelson. We hung out with him last night, heard a bunch of really crazy stories and some really cool stories, but today we're just here to find out a little bit more about the process of remote viewing. He claims to be the best remote viewing teacher in the country, and he claims that his successes have been, you know, documented and are above average and above everyone else in the field. So we're here to test those claims, but we will also be recording some of his, or documenting some of his process in remote viewing. Hopefully gain a little bit of insight in how we can improve our remote viewing as well. And then obviously get some interview footage with Mr. Dames as well. What are your first thoughts about this guy from last night?
Yeah, he was a super nice guy. Clearly very excited to talk to us, just in general, and especially share some of his life stories. But yeah, I don't know what to expect. He said some crazy things yesterday that I was just like, if that's true, what does that mean about the universe, you know? So this is part of my journey anyways, to kind of figure out whether any of this is really real. I'm still kind of slightly on the fence, so I don't know, we'll find out what he has to say today.
We're a little late. Maybe he showed up and was like, not on my watch.
I'm done.
Yeah, he's an Army guy, right? We were like 7 minutes late, so yeah, he just left. Can't blame him. I'm gonna give him a call. Maybe they got to him.
Oh shit.
His
Yeah.
number's just...
Your Ed Dames, please leave your number. I'll call you back as soon as possible.
Okay.
All right. Hope he's all right.
Yeah.
Now at this point, everything is kind of surreal. I've traveled across the country to come meet a former psychic spy. Hopefully spending time with Major Dames will give me a little bit more insight into how remote viewing works, and possibly even testing the legitimacy of this.
Essentially, I'm going to be working the target. Very valuable for your viewers.
Great.
Very valuable.
What's the target?
I'll show you.
You don't feel any type of, like, especially calm today, or... I was on Twitter today, and they were mentioning the resonant frequency.
Schumann resonant.
Exactly. And so we normally sit at around, what, 7.8?
Something like that.
Something like that. So today, it jumped up to 40.
To say the time spent with Major Dames was interesting would be an understatement.
My name is Major Edward A. Dames, U.S. Army retired. I am the former operations and training officer for the Department of Defense Stargate program. When I was selected as one of the 5 prototype members, Army members, to be trained by Ingo Swann, my mentor, to whom I later became protege, and that was 1983 and 1984. Training occurred during those 2 years. Ingo had just developed his structure, and so he came to Hal Puthoff and said, "Who's paying for this?" Because that was secret. And Hal said, "Well, the Army." And Ingo, frustrated, threw his hands up because his peers didn't want to be trained by him. Send me some Army officers, because theoretically, this structure should work with everyone, this model, this structure. And sure enough, as a prototype team, the 5 of us, it worked. And we became better than some of the better natural psychics in the world.
We spent hours chatting with Major Dames, and I couldn't fit it all into this video. So for the full versions of all these interviews in this video, as well as uncut remote viewing sessions by myself and Nelson, head to my Patreon.
And now I predominantly only teach specialized skills to my professionals. The rest of the time we actually use remote viewing in operations.
What kind of operations do you use them for?
Looking for instance, FBI fugitives. I support the U.S. Marshals mainly because they support me. They actually use my information where the FBI just throws it away. So I search for the FBI fugitives on my own.
After briefing us on some history about the project, Dames felt really strongly about showing us what his organization can do. To do this, he needed a target. And his target was this man.
Jason Derek Brown / present location.
Jason Derek Brown.
Jason Derek Brown.
Jason Derek Brown.
Jason Brown is now a face on the FBI's most wanted list.
Jason Derek Brown, on the run since November 29th, 2004.
There was not one single corroborated sighting out of the tens of thousands of tips we received.
This target has been on the FBI's most wanted list, and Dames is going to explain exactly how we can see this man's present location. During this process, Dames will go through stages 1 through 4 as we've explained previously.
No, but he's a killer, so you know this has to be handled very carefully.
What if he watches this video?
Fuck him. Okay, so when the target reference numbers are encased in square brackets, they are target reference numbers. My unconscious has been doing something, I have no idea, but now it's about ready to go. So this is a stage 1. Okay, stage 2 of the site. Textures. Wiry. Greasy. Perforated. A metallic. Gray. AOL break. Metal. Dump that in the trash. Continue. There's a rose color. Glassy as a color. Smells. Aromatic. AI break. Stinks. So I've got 4 archetypes, 4 key site aspects, we call them, at the site.
Dames takes a break to explain to us the different archetypes that are drawn throughout the ideogram process.
So a circle could be a life form. A loop is a life form. And an inverse loop can sometimes be a plant. If I have a broken loop like that, that's a person who is in the process of dying.
And when you're drawing this broken loop, you're not thinking about it, it's just happening.
That's not allowed.
And then you go back and notice that it's a broken loop, correct? Is that fair?
Oh no, I'll notice it immediately. My hand's doing, I'm just watching what my hand is doing. My automatic response to my autonomic nervous system, the mind-body reaction, this becomes an ideomotor response. A line like that is a surface. A spiral like that is energy. So this is universally a structure. That, moving fast and dissipating, is motion. That's not necessarily a mountain or a mountain range. It could be a tower as well. There's a very rare one, very rare. It's the infinity archetype. This is very rare. For instance, the shootout at the OK Corral and Golgotha, the march to the crucifixion, it'll produce that.
These tiny scribbles are drawn unconsciously and apparently have an associated meaning to them. These individual ideograms are then labeled, and he would then repeat stages 1 through 4 for each of these individual ideograms that he has produced. Now, although we didn't get any closer to finding the fugitive, Dames really believes that this location is where he currently is hiding. But obviously for us, there's no way of verifying that. And these unverifiable targets seem to come up quite a bit. Because at the end of the day, it's one thing to say with conviction that this is accurate information about a target, but if it isn't immediately verifiable, then I have no way of actually knowing. What is your response to skepticism?
I ignore them. I have so much work, I'm so focused on my work, I just don't have time to deal with them. I appreciate them. I mean, who wouldn't? Skepticism is extremely healthy. And had I not been in the positions I have been in, nor the position I'm in now, I certainly would be one of them. The moment that changed me was when Ingo Swann had me remote view the one of my first training targets, the Lincoln Monument, the Washington Monument. And of course, it was a blind target. I had no idea what the training target was. And it was a perfect rendition on my part of the Washington Monument. And Ingo just stared at me like that, saying, what did you think? This was fake or whatever. I looked at that and I said, where did that come from? What part of me was utilized to do this?
And although I want to believe that this process is accurate, I was ultimately just left with a few stories.
Chief of Staff for Intelligence for the U.S. Air Force, he did not believe that we could do what we could do. He was read on to our existence. So he sends an officer up with a folder, and I'm the operations officer, so I get this task, right? He says, look, we have this satellite photo of this blurry thing that we think is a new Russian fighter. We want you to give us information about that. 2 weeks later, I go down there to confront him. And the dumbass had because he didn't believe we could do what we do. So we're sketching this so-called fighter and another version. And I told him, hey, you know what? Yes, we have the information. He's saying, great. I said, you know, and there's another version of this that lands at Edwards Air Force Base. And then the smile went away. He gave us the own program, and we had to sign non-disclosure agreements because we busted the program, and he really ate a lot of crow that day.
It was an honor and a pleasure to work with Mr. Dames and to have him explain his process to us. All I knew is that if I wanted to get to the bottom of this, I would have to dig further. Dames mentioned the Monroe Institute.
But one thing that we did use, and I especially as operations officer, to evaluate potential recruits for the program was the Bob Monroe's program developing altered states and out of bodies things. Bob Monroe wrote the book Journeys Out of Body, specifically trying to convince people that you're more, quote, you're more than your physical self. And very, very, very interesting, very valuable.
And not by coincidence, also the location of Joe McMoneagle, remote viewer number 001. It was time to head to Nellysford, Virginia.
I've been looking for someone like you, a kind man who's honest and who's true.
Morning.
Morning. Here we go. On our way to see remote viewer number 001.